We've been having a great time on Stoke Lodge, the whole community out there today, with the kids making snowmen and igloos and doing the kinds of things that families and children have done on Stoke Lodge for 70 years without let or hindrance.
Now, it almost sounds like that was the sort of thing a lawyer might say, without let or hindrance. So let or hindrance has started to arrive at Stoke Lodge, has it? Can you just take us through what's happening there? I did see scenes of confrontation between Cotham School, people putting fences in, and some locals down there.
Yes, in the last few weeks it's kicked off. There's been this threat hanging over Stoke Lodge for years. The school has wanted to fence off the whole area, which is the last important green space in the area for the community to use. Now, in 2011, Cotham School, as a new academy, wanted a lease on this land, which had never required a lease before. Schools had used that land, and it had been used amicably with the community for years, many years, and suddenly, as an academy, they wanted a lease on this land. Now, the lease was issued. It was specially adapted to include a clause which protected all existing rights and use of the land, including by the community. The school is now, unfortunately, trying to rewrite that law, and unaccountably, Bristol City Council seem to be allowing them to do that. And that will mean that this precious green space, the last one in our area, and may I emphasise that Stoke Bishop is an area which has lower than the recommended minimum open space, and now they are trying to take this away from us by fencing it. They say the community may be allowed in through the gates, but there is no guarantee of that, and we don't actually believe that that will be always the case. Well, I'm sure
I'm not the only one that's thinking, crikey, I didn't even know Stoke Lodge was there. Whereabouts is it, so we can all make best use of it before a fence does fence us out?
Yes, come quick. It is at the bottom of Parry's Lane, just as Parry's Lane curves around towards Sharhampton roundabout. And as you come down there, you see this beautiful, beautiful historic estate with lots and lots, scores of important protected trees. The ground, the estate, it's the original estate, the original curtilage of a beautiful Victorian house which is listed, and in planning law the estate should not be divided from the house because it comes as one package. It's listed as one whole, and Bristol City Council and its planning officers and its experts on historic buildings have confirmed that status for that property right up until the beginning of last year or the middle of last year. They were still saying, right into the summer, I think I'm right in that any fence would have to have planning permission. And then in the last few months, suddenly they have decided that this no longer applies. Somehow the listed status of the estate has disappeared, and Cotham School are being allowed to split the house, which is now an adult education centre, from its land, so that 23 acres of public green space are being fenced off by a school, which says that they will only use it for about 12 hours a week.
Now, I did my best today to get someone from Cotham School down to join us. Without any luck, I'm afraid. I did actually manage to speak to someone called Penny Beeston, who's a mum from the school. She said that even though she runs a public relations company, Beeston Media, she's not actually doing public relations for Cotham School. She's just an interested person, an interested party, and she's running a Twitter account which is really supporting what the school are doing. What she's saying, effectively, is that this is just normal. Any land that's used by schools, you've just got to stop things like dog excrement on land, because you can't have the kids playing on a field where you've got dogs wandering around in the same area.
What I say to that is
I'm trying to be here for her, because she couldn't be here. I did ask her.
Sure, yes. It's a great pity that the school haven't sent anybody to speak, and I have to say that the head teacher, we've heard nothing from her since before Christmas.
But how do you answer people like Penny saying things like that? We just don't want dogs here. Simple as
Right.
that.
Well, I would cite the Downs, where people play games and sports, and the Belgrave School, for instance, uses it as their main sports area, and there are 12 to 15 other schools. I would cite also Fairfield School, which has open community access on its lovely grounds in Muller Road, and has worked towards developing those grounds in partnership with the community to continue community use.
I've also asked someone called Sandra Fryer at Cotham School, who's their Chief of Finance. Again, no reply from her, although it has to be said, it's very, very snowy today, and so the schools might well have been in a bit of a panic, worrying about other things rather than what's going on down at Stoke Lodge. What about this argument, though? Basic argument. I mean, I know you've given us some reason there, to disagree with it, but I mean, it's just, surely if they're going to be using it for school kids, they've got to be able to have some say, not maybe total say, over whether it's fenced or not.
Well, Bristol City Council in 2010 promised the community that property would never be fenced. So there's a promise there, there's a commitment there.
In writing?
Yes, in writing, I believe.
You should be able to enforce that. Who's the freeholder? How did the...
Bristol City Council are the freeholder. Yes.
They are?
They are, yes. And they promised that this would be community land. In their local plan, they have listed it as important open space for leisure use and community use. And as far as the dogs go, the community is very responsible about their dog walking. And there has always, when I first went to Stoke Lodge in about 1995 with my children, I was told by the person who took us, and I'd never seen it before, and my mouth fell open because it is so absolutely achingly beautiful. The trees are amazing. The space is amazing. You take a deep breath when you walk in there and you feel that you're stripped back to who you are. And that kind of feeling is completely priceless. It's so rare in our cities, and to destroy that access for people to go there and enjoy that place is the kind of thing they talk about. It helps your internal health, your mental health, your emotional health, and obviously it gives the whole community access to a place where they can walk, they can exercise, and the community joins together.
I understand also there's been some rather nasty injury which you found out about by a Freedom of Information request with one of the fences down there with some of the children. So, if the fence isn't just a fence, it also, in certain instances, can hurt, and I think, as I understand it, one of the children had their finger cut off.
Yes, this was at Coombe Dingle, which is the university facility that Cotham has used for years and years, whether or not they had access to Stoke Lodge, in fact. This was a 3-metre high fence. I don't know much about this personally, but I've heard what you've all heard. And the child was sent to get a ball that had gone over the fence, and decided to climb over the fence to get back in. And she had a ring on her finger, and I don't suppose she should have had one on for that sports session, but she did. And as she climbed over the top, the ring caught on the fence, and it removed her finger. I don't know how much of it.
Nasty. Well, anyway, fences can be problematic. Anyway, you want to say something, Kevin?
No, I was just wondering how, having made a commitment in writing, the council can be sneaking away from it.
Well, actually, I spoke to Councillor Chris Stevens earlier, who's a Green councillor, who's got a bit involved in this. He's not actually for that wall, but he's nearby. And he spoke at a planning meeting earlier this week, chaired by Sultan Khan, who he said Sultan Khan, he thought the chair was trying to manoeuvre things so that this could not be discussed at that meeting. And he said he believed that the council that the school and the people on the planning committee who were trying to make sure this wasn't discussed were bringing the council into disrepute.
We think that too. I was at that meeting and I saw the two councillors, Chris Stevens, what was his name again? Chris Stevens. Yes, and and also we had Richard Eddy, and they were both speaking in opposition to the fence, in opposition to fencing the community out of this green space. And Bristol City Council, via their development control manager, Gary Collins, has not explained, and at this meeting, Gary Collins did not explain or justify in any way the reversal of all Bristol City Council's policies up to now in relation to Stoke Lodge. We cannot understand how this is being allowed to happen, and I would say I absolutely agree it is bringing Bristol City Council into considerable disrepute, and Bristol into considerable disrepute, considering Bristol is trying to attract other people, organisations to come and live here. They need to have a consistent, clear policy, which is demanded of them, actually, in the rules of the behaviour of public organisations towards the general public.
Do you think it's the thin end of the wedge here? You know, we hear about the gated developments in all directions, and now that the schools are academies, are they actually just sort of staking their borders here? And so, in actual fact, thin edge of the wedge, as we know, we've always shared all the facilities on the Downs and Baddock's Wood and all these different green spaces and places, and bearing in mind these are the lungs of our city, and isn't it the council's responsibility to ensure that there's always free access, like with the Downs? I mean, that's covered by the Downs Act, isn't it? And
yes.
Free
yes.
And
the good old merchant venturers make sure that stays.
But they did say that
yes.
it should be free access to all the citizens of Bristol.
Yes.
And it was in perpetuity, isn't it? Is the phrase.
Well, look, the point here is, what is the Mayor saying? The Mayor, we now know, is in charge. Councillors have to take a bit of a back seat. What is the Mayor
he's saying he's
Mayor
King
saying?
Solomon, I believe. That's who he compared himself to at the last full council meeting. I think, in defence of the Mayor, I think he's trying to sort of placate the two sides. I think it's such a pity that the school is so diametrically opposed to the local community. I think it's such a shame. You know, these two groups should be working together for that. They're in the same community, in the same space, and it's such a shame they have such opposing views. And the Mayor is saying that he'd love to sort of bring the sides together to talk and compromise.
But
and
you see, in the old days, when these schools were controlled by the local authority, you wouldn't have to do that. You'd just say, take the fence down, and they'd do it. So this is, I suppose, maybe we'll just get a little bit from all of you about what you think of the whole academy school system. I mean, I've seen examples of some secondary schools where bits of playing fields are being built on by academies because they want to build little office blocks and places where they can run those commercially. But obviously then the kids can't use that playing field. Anyway, start with you, Mel.
Well, it's all about privatisation again and outsourcing, isn't it? And I have a friend whose daughter teaches out at Radstock, and she says that she's absolutely scandalised by the entrapment of the contracts and things that they have to adhere to. In her particular classroom, for instance, over the next 10 years, each of the blinds and windows have to be replaced, and each one will cost £8,000, and they can only go to them to have it done. So, you know, there's kind of like this is creeping up of all these things. But isn't it the Deputy Mayor, Asha Craig, she's actually responsible for public spaces and parks, isn't she? And didn't we have a recent consultation about, because of the cuts, of course, about looking to privatise parks and to actually make them self-funding?
Well, I'm not sure who's going to cut the grass in the parks, and that's going to be a cost. So I think it's impossible to have the parks as sort of self-funding organisations. They did talk about putting billboards in parks. I mean, that would just be appalling, wouldn't it? It would just ruin that beautiful feeling you were talking about earlier, Kathy, about when you walk into a wonderful space and it's spiritually uplifting. If there were billboards everywhere, that would not be the case. But I do understand that isn't going to happen now.
No, it isn't. I mean, but the whole subliminal advertising thing, we don't want that.
No.
And also charging dog walkers was another one, wasn't it?
And park run and things like that.
Can't they just hire those fields out to farmers and then they can grow Swedes and
we might
turnips,
have to if we can't get food imported, so...
I would love to see common land being grazed by livestock, actually. You know, down at on the sea walls, they've got the goats there, haven't they? And it's a very natural way of managing land, yes.
How can you play football if you've got sheep wandering around your...
Not on the cliffs. You can't play football on cliffs, can you? So.
No, I mean, I'm thinking about Stoke Lodge here, really.
Ah, right.
we can have sheep on there.
I think you can share spaces and places. And if the school is only, you know, sort of going to be using it for 12 hours a week, then it's absolutely ridiculous in my mind, the idea that you would fence off. Because as soon as you start putting fences up, there's a famous poem that says, do fences make friends? And I actually think that borders and boundaries... They don't. They put up obstacles between people, don't they?
Yeah,
Well,
Donald Trump is a fan of walls and fences,
he
but
certainly is,
yes,
yeah.
I wouldn't want to
I'm
be
sure if the school were here,
anything like him.
I really, I think we ought to emphasise, if the school were here, they would probably tell us there's some sort of legal reason why they've absolutely got to have this.
Well, I understand that Ofsted said it wasn't necessary. I'm not sure if that's correct. I heard that on the grapevine.
Kathy, can you help us out with that one?
Ofsted did not say that a fence was necessary. They went out of their way to state that there was no statutory reason why this area should be fenced.
Yes.
So, I suppose you'd be down there pretty much on and off permanently at the moment, trying to stop this fence being built. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. And can I just say, though, that we really wish that these two communities were not at loggerheads over this. We would love the children of Cotham School to come back and be on the fields with us, and we have offered many times to access community funding in partnership with the school to build, for instance, a new pavilion, which at the moment they cannot use this land anyway because there is no usable pavilion there. So they're fencing in land
now,
which they probably won't be able to use.
I just heard a little cough there. Was that you, Richard Eddy?
It was.
Richard, the Conservative councillor on the line. The phone line worked, but I didn't hear from you, so I didn't even announce you. Richard, can you just give us some of your take? You're a Conservative councillor locally. Can you give us your take on what's happening down there?
By all means, I've been properly involved with Stoke Lodge for about 6 months, so obviously I'm not the ward councillor. I'm based in South Bristol, but I'm also the vice chairman of the DVC, that's Development Control Planning Committee B, and that dealt with the issue this Wednesday and also in December about the notices Cotham School erected last year, really seeking to bully local people, and we actually turned down one of those notices, believing it was illegal and utterly inappropriate. The fact, in my view, the council's utterly balked at actually taking a leading role and insisting that the legal and planning rules are adhered to is unacceptable. As Kathy said before, by rights, the school should put forward a planning application. But last December, the council officers actually went feeble on this and claimed they could actually use so-called permitted development rights to erect it. Now, that's an issue which I've sought to take up, as Clive Stevens did on Wednesday at the Planning Committee. And we have a chance and opportunity to say that decision should be called in, and the applicant, the school, should actually appeal and put forward a planning application. They've refused to do that. I would also say, regarding the trees, it's disgraceful. Many of the trees on this site are actually protected by tree preservation orders, and there are decreed national rules about how you deal with that. But again, in December, the council refused to use the powers available to it. They said they'd take a discretionary approach with the school. So in fact, despite the fact the school, in my view, is damaging, even killing some of the trees by cutting at their roots, the council sitting back and doing nothing.
Richard, so what powers does the planning committee have to actually pull them into line?
Well, one of your panel said before the mayor's role is limited. He's repeatedly said, it's not my decision. It's officers, planning officers, dealing under delegated powers under the Planning or Development Control Committee. And that's just what Clive Stevens and I tried to do this Wednesday, to say it's a decision for us. We can actually make the score apply to us. It's quite unacceptable. The council's ditching the national and local rules here. And I would agree with Councillor Stevens. Sadly, I don't think the committee took the issue seriously. And Kath is completely right. In my experience, I've been a school governor in this city for 30 years. We've never had a case where a school like Cotham has gone to war with a surrounding area like the people of Stoke Bishop.
Richard, Eddy, thanks very much for joining us. And Richard is the Conservative councillor for Bishopsworth. So I think we probably better draw a line under this now, Cathy, but I'll leave the last word to you. Just to remind you, the audience, that I asked directly campaigner Penny Beeston if she could come in through her company, Beeston Media. I didn't get a reply. And I also spoke to Cotham School and asked for Sandra Fryer or anyone else to come in to give their point of view. I didn't get a reply from them either. Where do we go from here then? Are you going to be resisting this fence, and if so, how? We are going to be resisting the fence. We are not going to go away. This is completely unjust. We want Cotham children back on that field. We want to share the space. I cannot understand why Cotham regards our children, the children of our community, as less worthy of being able to enjoy this last green space, not having any green space in their immediate area, and not only the children, but a very mixed community with plenty of elderly, disabled and vulnerable adults, as well as the children, lots of families, and why Cotham has been so antagonistic and targeted us and tried to get us off this field so that they can have exclusive use to the field is anybody's guess. We cannot but think there must be a larger agenda behind that. But we will be fighting it to the last minute. OK, right, well, that's brilliant. Thank you, Cathy Welham. I would just say also, Sandra Fryer or somebody from Cotham, please get off your fence, if I can say that, come down and talk to people. Stop behaving like Starbucks. Stop behaving like Shell. You're not a big multinational. You've got human beings to deal with here, and I think you should at least make some sort of effort to get on with your neighbours. So thanks ever so much for joining us, Cathy. We're also joined, as I said at the start, by Andrew Varney. Andrew, you've got some news today about the Liberal Democrats' mayor policy.
That's right. We've got a rather unusual policy, you might say, in that we want to get rid of